You're listening to the Project Ignite podcast,
where real digital entrepreneurs reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help you ignite and grow your online business.
ProjectIgnite.com. Your digital business starts here.
Now, here's your host, Derek Gale.
Welcome back to another episode of the Project Ignite podcast, where we skip the BS, we skip the hype, we just bring you real entrepreneurs, people that are actually doing stuff online, and figure out how they're doing it so you can learn from them. This is your host, Derek Gale, and today we're going to be diving deep into advertising and Amazon and how they fit together. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation because, you know, so many people have this perception that with Amazon, you just need to find the right product, put it up, and, the sales just come flooding in. And, Amazon's changing, Amazon's evolving. Nobody can deny that there's millions upon millions of people going there every day and shopping. But if you want to really build a brand that takes off on Amazon, you got to do a little bit more than just listing that product and hoping for the best. So today, to help us better understand how to actively drive growth on Amazon rather than passively sit back and hope for the best, as many people do, I have an Amazon advertising expert who's the CEO of Zon Lux Digital, an agency that helps companies grow their brands on Amazon using SEO, paid traffic, and such. He's also got 17 years of experience in the natural products industry and has managed over $200 million of revenue from Amazon health and personal care brands in both the USA and Europe. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one and only Bill Hughes to the show. Bill, thank you so much for being here today.
Derek, thanks for having me.
So, okay, let's start with you. How did you, give us your entrepreneurial journey, right? How did you get into this whole Amazon thing, the health stuff, to landing here today on this podcast?
Boy, entrepreneurial journey, those are the people I admire because I've always had the comfort of being able to do everything I've done under, corporate and clients. And so I see these entrepreneurs who have put out their own, financial, tenets to make their brands work. And I really admire them. But at the same time, because I've been able to use other people's money to help grow their brands, it's given me the opportunity to experiment a lot and split test a ton of things. And so on one hand, I'm grateful I didn't have to go through the pains of being an entrepreneur, but on the other hand, I'm grateful that I've been able to learn it in a way that kind of solidifies a foundation that will help others.
Well, look, and the one thing though I love about having gentlemen and ladies that come from an agency background like yourself is you give us a wider view of an industry. Because whenever I bring somebody on that's just had their own business, they may have a very siloed view of something. But I always enjoy these conversations because you get to see so much when you're working across different businesses. And, before the show started, we started getting into some really good stuff. And this is a topic that kind of fascinates me. And I kind of gave you a little bit of my background, and it's interesting. We both come from and are involved heavily in the health and health supplement space, but we both are coming at it from two very different directions. I come at it from the God damn it, Amazon, leave me alone perspective, because we build our brands off Amazon. You build your, and I'm on Amazon. I spend too much money on Amazon myself, so I don't necessarily dislike Amazon. They're an amazing platform. You, on the other hand, come from the perspective of, hey, let's use Amazon to build our brands. And
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Two completely different perspectives, and the paths are different to get to the end result. But I think it's interesting that both can either lead in success or failure. I've seen both for sure.
Yeah, and so, okay, what do you think the advantage or disadvantage of one or the other is? Why do you think Amazon is a starting point to build a brand? Is it better? Is it different? What's your take?
Yeah, completely. A lot of brands can be successful, marketing directly to consumers, because you're bringing people into the process, you're introducing them to a product. It's a function of how much you're willing to spend to bring them in. and how much believability that you can create behind your story. And once you get that funnel down, you can really get going with it. The challenge then becomes like at some point you find yourself being successful and you think to yourself, how do I leverage this success outside of my current channel, like outside of a direct to consumer marketplace or something like that? And that's when it becomes really, really challenging. And so what I encourage, brands that I work with to do is like, hey, it's really about the product you're selling, and then we can help you with the channel. So once you find a product that you're successful with, let's immediately explore what other channel opportunities that there are and start working on those channels. And the reason that we do that is because if you can solidify 2 or 3 channels, you're already thinking early on about your exit strategy. Exit has so much to do with multi-channel, sales of your product, not just the product itself. And so focusing on that early on is key to being able to deliver an exit in the end.
Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, anybody who's buying a company, they don't want a one-trick pony. They want to see it diversified across channels. That builds reliability. All right, so your focus is on Amazon. You launch brands on Amazon. And where I want to kind of focus our discussion today is how you promote a brand on Amazon. Because as I kind of said in the intro, a lot of people, and this is due to, I think, a lot of the hype around Amazon and all the make money on Amazon programs that exist out there, that their headline is, get your product in front of millions of eyeballs every day instantly, right? That are shopping on Amazon. And so people just figure, I can source a product, drop ship it, and be rich, which you and I both know is far from the truth, and it requires a heck of a lot more strategy and work than that. So when we talk about Amazon and advertising, what does that encompass? What are our advertising options on Amazon?
Yeah, that's a great question. You've presented this scenario, which is so true, because it's always, people have always seen it as an either or kind of thing. Well, either I'll start my brand off Amazon or I'll start it on. And that's because advertising tools on Amazon were so limited to Amazon. You basically have your own version of pay-per-click within Amazon. You have some display side advertising. You have events that you can participate with. And it ends up being this completely different world than if you're used to like Facebook or native or, other methods of advertising. And it can feel really, there's a lot of friction at first. And so you feel like, why am I wasting my time with this? Like you start looking at return on ad spend and just, it feels like there's just way too much friction. And so, I'd love to just kind of talk about some of the things that brands do early on with Amazon to get that advertising, that flywheel going.
Yes.
So that eventually you can stop that and get some organic traffic, going directly to your listing for sure.
Okay. And so what are those things to get the flywheel going initially?
Excellent question. So I would challenge anyone to, first of all, see if they can sell their product off of Amazon. See if they can build that funnel outside of Amazon first to make sure that it has a pickup from the audience, right? That you've created an audience, that you actually have an audience, that you found a price point, a value proposition that can work. I would do that before even attempting to list the item on Amazon, just to be sure that you have a product that has, some legs behind it. If you can do that, then the options are very open to you on Amazon. We can go to Amazon, we can look at any category and see exactly the number of visitors per month that are going to that category, or even searching on the keywords that are relevant to your product. And by looking at like total number of visitors and then the competitive products, what your price point is of your product and your value proposition, then we can get a pretty good estimate of how many units you might sell if, for example, say you're in the third or fourth spot on the page for that keyword. And again, that's something that we can kind of pinpoint. We can say, well, the price points are all around $24.99 for this product. And we're noticing that competitors 1, 2, and 3, they're kind of all within that price point. But competitor 4, they've really dropped the ball. Their star ratings are down. So we think there's an opportunity for you to take the 4th spot, and then we'll start there. And then we can work our way down to 3, 2, and 1. And if you get that 4th spot, we can fairly accurately predict, how many units per day you'll sell of your item. And then that gives you an idea of how much advertising spend you'll need to as an input to get that flywheel going on Amazon.
Okay, so when you say the advertising spend, so we go in, the scenario that you're looking at there, we have 4 products, 1 sucks. We're going to go in there. We can estimate based on search volume how much we can expect. And so when you say advertising, is that basically being a sponsored product in that category? So you're making sure you show up for those keywords?
Yeah, super easy to do. Amazon has a great console in the background where you can set up, just like every other ad pay-per-click platform, you can set up how much you want to bid on your keywords. Amazon has the ability to kind of let it go automatically. And then once you kind of let it go automatically for a while, you can harvest some of those keywords and then start doing manual bids on certain keywords that you want to go after. So it's going to feel, if you've done Facebook advertising, it's going to feel extremely similar. I would say the only difference is that where in Facebook advertising and other platforms, your audience, even though you can customize your audience can be very broad still, whereas with Amazon, exactly your audience, exactly which keyword they're going after. Mm-hmm. And that if they land on the right keyword and look at the product that's right for them, conversion is going to be extremely high. I mean, that's the biggest change that people see. They're used to conversion, with Facebook advertising, converting to sale on their website, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. Amazon, you don't be surprised when you start seeing 20, 25, and 30% conversion on your product when you hit the right keyword. That's normal for Amazon. Very normal.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's just the mentality. I mean, people go to Amazon, they're looking to buy, right? Like, it's just such a different mentality than Facebook in particular. I mean, to me, it almost sounds like it'd be closer to almost an AdWords play. You can specify the keyword, but even I've never seen a 25% conversion on an AdWords keyword, even for like direct brand, which is incredible. So, all right. So we get the sponsored listing and we start spending some money, and that starts to get the flywheel, as you put it, moving.
Right.
So we start to gain momentum.
Yeah.
What next?
Next, we need to ensure that your product is getting reviewed correctly by your audience. This is really important. And it's not so much the product itself as it is the expectations that you're setting for your product. Now, this is going to be very different from off Amazon selling. Off Amazon selling, if your product isn't performing or it doesn't meet expectations, that's not really a problem. You can just change your inputs and recreate your audience and continue. The challenge with Amazon is it's like this little black book of history. Everywhere you go, you're carrying that black book with you. And so really early on, we need to manage those reviews and the expectations that you're creating for your buyer, okay? And when I say manage, Amazon gives us a number of tools where we can go and ask the buyer for a review. And we're not going to incentivize that buyer for a review. And to stay within Amazon's terms and conditions, we're not going to ask for a 5-star review. But we do want to create the expectation for the customer that even a 4-star review is going to hurt us. If you're satisfied with this product, we really, really want that 5-star review from you. And that is critical. And those first 100 reviews that come in, we really, really need to make sure that those stay above 4.5 average, preferably like a 4.7. We'd love to see those first reviews come in so that your star rating maintains a 5. That's going to create the maximum impact. If those reviews aren't managed, if there's not some process in place to help those reviews the negative reviews are going to kill the product before you even get a chance to get out of the gate.
So, okay, when we talk about, it's either going to help or kill the product, are you talking in terms of conversion, or are we talking in terms of the flywheel and how much visibility that Amazon's giving it?
Yeah, really the flywheel, which has to do with conversion. It's amazing how Amazon will penalize any metric that you get wrong to the point where it starts to affect everything else. So even if your conversion is high, but all of a sudden your reviews start coming in lower, Amazon's algorithm is naturally going to put you lower on the page, which means less people are going to see the listing, which means overall, even though the listing may convert, your just overall traffic to the listing is going to be low enough that it's not going to matter as much. I mean, it's almost better to be high on the page as long as you possibly can, getting the product to convert above 20% if possible, depending on the category, and then get those reviews to come in. And like I said, like 70 to 100 of those, like you are positioning yourself in a really top spot for that keyword if you could maintain that.
So, okay. So now 2 questions. First of all, does the actual seller's previous history and authority play any role in how a new product is going to perform? So if I'm a seller and I've got massive history and I bring a new product, does that help that product, or is it just starting even?
Just minor help. It helps in that you're bound to have issues with your product and with Amazon. You're bound to be on the phone with seller support trying to get your product listed again when it goes down. These are all very normal things. Mm-hmm. And if that account history is good. But as far as the algorithm that kind of puts you higher on the page, unless your seller history is really, really bad, you're still going to be okay. You can still use an account that just hasn't performed well and launch a product and be great with it. Gotcha.
Okay. So now let's talk about reviews for a second, because I mean, the Amazon review landscape is it's tough. And you say, no incentivized reviews. Every other product I get from Amazon is incentivizing me to leave reviews. So yeah. And then on the flip side of that too now, it's getting to the point where when I go to Amazon and I see a product that is, a perfect example was looking at webcams recently, and there's a bunch of no-name brand, never heard of them before webcams with, 2,000 reviews. And I know exactly what's going on there. There's massive incentivization for people to come back and leave good reviews. There's something in every package that goes out. So on the flip side, you're saying don't incentivize. Meanwhile, everybody's incentivizing.
Right. Well, those days are going to come to an end. And we've talked about that for a long time, but Amazon is very aware, and if that's your strategy, you need to be thinking of a new one. Let me give you a different approach, okay? I want you, instead of thinking about begging the customer on the back end of the transaction to do you a favor and leave those reviews, I want you instead, to think about on the front end, just the same way that you've been so good at building like a Facebook funnel. I want you to think about that as in terms of Amazon, and think about bringing people into your funnel on the front end of the transaction and nurturing them before they even buy your product, and bringing them into your funnel. But just before they make the transaction on your Shopify site, instead, incentivize them to buy it on Amazon. I don't mean discount it, or I don't necessarily even mean, give them money back. I just mean incentivize them to buy it on Amazon through making an offer that they can't refuse. A buy one, get one free, a buy one, get two free. You're saying, hey, I know you're interested in my product, but for the sake of my brand, I'm asking you, instead of buying it on my website, to go buy it through Amazon. Yeah, you're giving away some margin there. And for sure, you're going to feel like, well, am I losing this customer to Amazon? But not at all. What you're really doing is you're creating a process where after they buy the product on Amazon, that you own that customer at that point, not Amazon. You found the customer, You brought them into the funnel. You took them to Amazon and held their hand through the entire transaction. After the transaction is complete, you're going to reward them for participating in your process. And then, because they are your customer, then you're going to nurture that review process. You know who they are. They're your customer. You want to nurture that review. You want to make sure that you can get that review from the Amazon transaction. And then finally, the final step is then you want to bring them back into your own process and outside of Amazon. Not necessarily keep them in Amazon. Amazon has great programs for repeat buyers, subscribe and save and things like that. But that's not how you build your business. You don't want to build it on Amazon. But you know that for your brand to succeed, you've got to have an Amazon play and presence, and it has to be significant.
Okay, so that's interesting. So what you just said there is you don't want to build your entire business on Amazon, but it's a component of building an overall brand.
Very much.
So
very much.
Okay, so and just to clarify, so when let's say I do exactly what you say there, and I say, okay, Mr. Customer, hey, I've got this, I want you to go buy from my Amazon store. Here's a great incentive to go and do that. I send them to the Amazon store. How am I tracking their purchase?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing who purchased, and then am I giving them something additional that they have to come back and claim from me?
Yeah, I mean, I see some of these funnels, they'll ask for Amazon order ID, but the truth is you still get enough data out of Amazon that you can match that customer up. The agency that I run, we have a lot of tools that will help match up. Now, we can't match if we don't know who they are on the back end.
Yeah.
We used to be able to do that. 2017, 2018, those were the good old days, right? Amazon has locked down the data. But as long as we know who they are before we send them to Amazon, we can definitely have every piece of data that we need to follow up with them after the transaction.
Gotcha. Okay, so now this brings the question, and this is a topic that we'd started talking about before, but I said, stop, I want to talk about this on the show because I think there's value, and that is lifetime value, right? Because, I mean, in terms of acquiring customers, I come from the camp of I build brands off Amazon, I will buy traffic, and I'll even take a loss buying getting a customer, because I know I'm going to make that over the next 3 to 6 months back and profit, right?
Right.
But I can only do that because I have the customer and I have their information and they bought from me, and I can continue to follow up and include them in my different funnels and et cetera, et cetera. With Amazon, that's always been my challenge, is I don't get a customer. I mean, and like you said, they're locking that data down. And so, it's a catch-22 because, Amazon's getting more competitive, so we need to spend more money to get the eyeballs on our product. But at the same time, I don't have lifetime value to play with, so that means I can only spend X amount to actually, acquire a customer. And I got to make profit on that transaction potentially, because I don't know if I'm going to make anything on the back end. How do we handle that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And boy, you really have to have long-term vision and really good 20/20 eyesight to make sure that you understand those numbers. And it sounds like, Derek, I mean, you absolutely understand your lifetime value of a customer, but can I paint the picture of what their real lifetime value is? So our agency is part of Grove, which is one of the many Amazon consolidators. There's companies out there like Thrasio and others. Grove, we specifically focus on the health and household category. And these companies that we're buying and partnering in Grove, we look specifically for their multi-channel approach to how they sell their product. So what excites us the most when we go to look at a company is if they have a strong direct-to-consumer component, if they have a decent Amazon component, if they have a viable retail component, and if they have any other channels that they've been able to be successful. And I'm talking like international. I'm talking about Walmart.com, Groupon, Brad Steals, all these other ones that just kind of are like, oh yeah, there's consumer interest out there for these products. Okay. And when all of those numbers fit together, and I'm just going to give you kind of a sample ratio of what we like in the health and household, but suppose that your company is at least 50% direct to consumer, 30% Amazon, 10% retail, and 10% other channels. I mean, that gets everybody drooling. That gets the consolidators excited. That gets private equity excited, because everybody knows that your brand has that value. Whereas if it were only direct to consumer, only Amazon, you go out there, you go to sell the company, you're going to get offered a 3 times your net profit. You're going to get offered 4, maybe 5. If you have those other components in place already, that valuation easily can double. I've seen easily 10, 11, and 12 on those companies that have that multifaceted strategy. Now go back and calculate the lifetime value of your customer. All of a sudden, that lifetime value just pretty much doubled or tripled. And so you're like, wow, if I had only spent more money on getting those customers into my funnel early on, I wouldn't have realized, every customer that I thought was maybe worth $100 to me, when I go to sell my company, that customer was probably worth more like $300 to me.
Sure. Right. And that's an interesting way to look at it in terms of what is the exit value of that customer. Now, one thing just to explain, because I know a lot of people are going to have no idea what you're talking about. When you talk about an Amazon consolidator, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of a new phenomenon out there. I mean, before, as a brand, selling on Amazon, to exit, you only had a handful of options. You could sell through one of the many brokerages, and they're great brokerages. We work with them all the time. Website Closers, Empire Flippers, those guys are awesome to work with. Or you could sell to private equity. Private equity might approach you and say, okay, we're going to value this. We want you to stay on here. But what we've seen in the past couple of years is the rise of consolidators. So, for example, our model at Grove is, hey, we're going to pay you a full fair valuation for your brand, what it's worth today. But, for example, we're only going to give you 50% cash, and the rest you're going to come on as an equity partner. And you're going to continue to work with us. You're going to leverage all of our resources: retail, legal, label creation, marketing, video production, Amazon listing, website, sales meetings with Target. You're going to leverage all of our resources. In the end, as an entire group of companies, we're going to have 20, 30, 40 under our umbrella. At some point, we're going to sell this entire thing. And instead of the valuation of the entire thing being, a 5, 6, or 7, it's going to be worth like a 20 or a 30, because we've been able to consolidate and do it right. And so your 50% equity that you were sharing with us that was maybe worth 5 million is now worth 15 or 20 million when we go to sell as a whole company. That's the consolidation model. That's what we're seeing out there. Thrasio, their valuation to be able to raise the money and do this with businesses has been incredible. We're hoping ours kind of does the same thing, and we're very focused on health and household and beauty, grocery, pet. So we're hoping that by investors seeing, hey, this is a very focused category, that we'll get some of that business. But who's the winner in this? It's the brands. It's the small brands that may have thought they were only going to be able to sell for 2 or 3 million that are now potentially going to be worth more like 5 to 10 million in this process.
That's interesting. Okay. I honestly had no idea this was, and I've gone through I've sold companies before. I did not know this was happening in the brand space. I mean, I know I've seen a lot of guys, and I know guys that have had their brands picked up. In many cases, it's been private equity over the last couple of years coming in and swooping up brands, or a bigger player that already has kind of a suite, like bigger brands. So these consolidators, then their exit strategy is going to be to like a big, like a Procter Gamble or a really big.
Exactly. I mean, we just saw, if you could consider the vitamin company NBTY, which makes that brand that you see, on the Walmart shelves, Nature's Bounty, and other brands, they were just purchased by Nestle. Mm-hmm. And, these larger food companies that are realizing that they have to have this different components, or same thing with pet food. You'll see the bigger companies just say, look, we've got to have a piece of the small action, but we don't have time. We don't have the resource to go do these $10 million transactions. It's just not worth our time. They have to devote so many resources to do an acquisition. And plus, they take on a ton of liability every acquisition they do. So they're looking to do billion-dollar acquisitions. They don't have time for anything less.
Yeah.
And so the consolidator's job is to buy the small companies, bring them on board, get the process down, get things working, get things clean up all the legal liabilities, package it nicely, and then sell it to these larger brands who are willing then to take the risk knowing that things have been cleaned up in the process.
So what is the, and we're kind of going down a rabbit hole, but I find this fascinating, so let's do it. When you're trying to sell your brand, obviously, you said you want to have Amazon and direct to consumer and stuff like that. How much of a role does traditional retail still play in the valuation?
A huge role. I mean, look, if I had $100 to spend on acquiring every customer, I would make sure that I incentivize that customer to go to the Kroger shelf and buy my product there. It's really, really, really important that you get that shelf space and you maintain it in a store. That alone has an incredible amount of value on the exit strategy. To be able to say, not only is my product sold on Target.com, but it's literally on the shelves. Here, I'm going to show you the picture. It's in 100 stores. Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, it's been there for the past 6 months. They haven't taken it off shelf. That's a big, big deal to get that shelf space. It also opens up a door with your consumers. When you can start showing in your funnels, and I say funnels, I mean, everybody knows, right? That's those things that you click on that show you the product initially. If you can show your product on the shelf in Target, mm-hmm. your conversion value is going to be so much higher than any kind of other lifestyle video with stock art that you could ever create. It's going to have a huge impact on your brand.
And so, I mean, I have some thoughts on that. I'd like to hear yours. Why?
Yeah, I mean, the adoption rate by consumers for retail brands is still high. There's a trust factor. Mm-hmm. They're willing to buy. It goes back to your example of the webcam. If you had seen that webcam on the shelf in Best Buy, even though you had no intention of buying it, but if you could just remember that was a floor display at Best Buy, you probably wouldn't be saying that those 2,000 reviews are fake.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Absolutely 100% right. Interesting. Okay. And so now going back to the advertising side of this whole thing, you talk about, say, let's talk about Facebook. You're talking about Facebook advertising now, and you guys do that in your agency. Now, when you're doing these media buys, whether it be Facebook or SEO or whatever, are you directing that straight to Amazon, or are you directing it to the brand website?
Yeah, I mean, because it depends on, if we're doing just direct to consumer, we'll definitely just direct it to the website and work on conversion at the website. Mm-hmm. But any other channel, we know we're going to lose the buyer in the process, right? We're basically taking them to the dance, dropping them off in the limo and saying, hey, after, call me at midnight and we'll meet back up. And you're just kind of hoping that they're out there at the curb by the time you come pick them up. That's not a great strategy. So we like to hold their hand and nurture them very much up front before we deliver them to an Amazon or a Target.com or a Walmart.com. We like to make sure that we've already built that relationship of trust. Therefore, we'll do a lot on the front end in those funnels to gather the customer information, to help them understand what the product is before we drop them off at the dance. And then knowing full well that we have their contact info, that we can contact them after the transaction, ask them how it went, and then hopefully bring them back to be a direct-to-consumer customer. There's no reason that we need to hand them off permanently to these other guys. We want all of our new customers to go and use those other sites, and then we want to bring them back to our D2C sites. There's no reason that once we gather that D2C customer, there's no reason to take them directly to our brand pages. when we have all these other opportunities that we need to use them for.
So, okay, and now the other thing you've said a few times is, I mean, we're talking about Amazon, but then you've also said, and Walmart and Target. And how much of a role do those play? And are those just sort of a byproduct of sales going there, or do you ever actively work to build up on those specific platforms?
Very actively now. Again, it goes to that exit valuation. Those, again, from the lifetime value of your customer, they don't contribute that much, but from the standpoint of a sale, they are very important. And I think that's because investors understand how much money Walmart.com is putting behind things like Walmart Plus, Walmart Fulfillment Services. It's only a matter of time before, Amazon is maybe perceived like Sears. It was the biggest player forever. And it's not that Sears is out of the picture, but it's just that we have thousands of other options. There will be a point where we will have thousands of other options besides Amazon. So you want to be prepared as a brand to be on those other platforms. Even if it doesn't happen during the lifetime of your ownership of the brand, somebody who's going to buy that brand knows that that's important, and therefore you want to be there.
Okay. All right. So now one more question before we wrap up, and that is, this is my own curiosity again, is have you seen, you want to get into retail, right? You want to get on the physical shelves, and, Walmart, Target, obviously would be, great holy grails of places to get on shelves, potentially, depending on your brand. Now, have you ever seen, is there if you get onto a Walmart.com and you start moving volume on Walmart.com, do they ever move those brands into their traditional retail? Does it make it easier getting in? Or are they just like, mom doesn't know what dad's doing?
That is exactly the data that they're looking at. I mean, I'm telling you, if you were to walk into Walmart and try and pitch your product for the first time without any e-commerce data behind it, it would almost be impossible, unless you had like the holy grail of products, right? But they look 100% at their .com data to make sure. Now, a lot of brands don't have Walmart.com data. They only have Amazon data. But believe me, Walmart retail has that Amazon data. And if you have strong data, they'll pick it up. The one area of data that they don't have is your direct-to-consumer data. Mm-hmm. There's no way for them to verify it. They can go to your Facebook ads library and look at your ads and kind of get a feel for it. They can do a lot of Google searches and kind of see what the trends look like for your brand. But it's just not nearly as compelling as having industry data from the .coms out there that are supporting your brand. That is going to be key to getting you on the shelf.
Excellent. Fascinating. All right. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and honestly, it's been enlightening. I've talked to other people about Amazon and brand building, but I think this was as practical. This is how you do it. Here's the systems. Love it. So now, before we wrap up, though, if people want to connect with you, learn more about what you do, your agency, where can they find you?
That's great. I'd love for people to reach out to me. I love to talk about this stuff. I love talking to entrepreneurs. My easiest contact is Bill at zonluxdigital.com. That's ZONLUXDIGITAL.com. We're an Amazon agency, but we do a lot more than that. Kevin Harrington from the Shark Tank is one of the helpers that helped build this business. He has a lot of great vision for what it means to be a good growing brand, and so he kind of helped us get on our feet. And so we carry that same mentality as every brand. What would it be like for you to be up in front of the sharks and at the Shark Tank? Sure. And that's how we think about it. It's a lot of fun. And
he's one of the unique sharks. I mean, his history. I mean, that guy invented bloody infomercials. I mean, he invented the as seen on TV stuff. He understands branding. He understands what it takes to make something stand out. That's awesome. All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Eric, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Now, everybody who's listening, that was a crash course in brand building on Amazon. And I'll be honest, like that gave me a completely different perspective on Amazon and a different way to think about it. And I hope it did for you as well. And on that note, guys, the only way this stuff works for you is if you don't just listen to it, but you actually do something with it. So take something you learned today and apply it and watch the results happen. And as always, if you like what you heard, leave me a rating, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. 4 stars is acceptable. I'd prefer 5. No incentives. Just me pleading for you to do it. And on that note, this show is a wrap. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of the Project Ignite podcast with Derek Gale.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of this episode, can be found at projectignite.com/podcast.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go to iTunes or SoundCloud now and subscribe.